Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the FRS. We are here in Season 6 for Round 7 in Hungary Xbox Division 1. We're here in the back half of the season. Let's take a look at the classic circuit. 4.3 kilometers around, just the two DRS zones serviced by one detection point down the front straight and then into turn 2. Otherwise, it's a tricky circuit to follow cars around. You gotta stay close and try and make the moves happen. Still haven't fixed that, but it is only the second time the FRS has actually visited Hungary, the other time being in Season 4. That was left over from last week. But at 443 meters, Hungary does have the second longest run from pole to turn 1 of this season. Now, of course, that does lead into turn 1, which is the best of your overtaking opportunities, the primary action zone here at the end of that front DRS straight. And it does lead into a second opportunity into turn 2. But the other big overtaking chance to set you up for that final sector as well, turn 12. The high-speed right-hander before it, but you come down the hill. There is a chance if you can get a run, but it's also all about setting yourself up for that back and forth, long left, long right that rounds out the entire lap. The soft, medium, and hard, as usual. The medium is being about 0.7 of a second slower per lap. The hard's 1.4 seconds slower per lap, but lifetime-wise, the softs will go about 13 laps. The medium's 23, the hard's 29, so do just about this race distance. The softs will fall off relatively quickly, so don't expect them to be a great race tire barring late safety car situations. Here's the championship standings as they are. Cryptic in the lead now, 84 points, 1 point ahead of Lauren Spores in second. LC Fighter is in third with 81, and Queasy Pluto rounds out the top 4. Habs Fan Nick to the top 5. So we'll jump into qualifying as it is a bit cloudy to get out for our first flying lap of the session. Go a little bit wide to try and open up the entry angle, open up the DRS for our first flying lap of the session. We're going to head down this front straight just about the 100-meter board, pick a braking point to get hard on the brakes into turn 1, get the car nice and rotated, then get the rear end settled as we open up the rear wing for that second little blast down into turn 2. Open up the angle as much as we can, get the car rotated. This downhill creates a lot of understeer. Little snap of oversteer on the exit, getting on the throttle, flat out right-hander downhill. Now the tricky turn 4 at the top of this hill. Got to try and keep it in bounds, very tough. This long right-hander, a little wide. You want to try and get closer to the apex. Now you head up this hill into a little tricky right-left chicane, and now we get to kind of the rhythm section of the lap. Little brake turn in for turn 4, a little bit of rotation. Just try and get the car settled in. And then into this right-hander of turn 11 at the top of the hill. Looks like our teammate, or Chuck has gone off actually, not our teammate. That is Chuck who's off. We have to take a little bit of avoiding action. Might have cost us just a little bit of momentum. But into the final couple of corners of the sector. Of course, 2 green sectors because it's personal bests. It is our first lap of the session. And then the long final right-hander. Get the car rotated. Wait to get on the power as soon as you can. Open up the steering. Open up the DRS. And across the line we go to a 17.2, which at the moment provisionally P4 in this early running. So jumping ahead now to our second run out on the track. 9 minutes left to go in the 18-minute qualifying session. We will gear up for another one. See if we can find some time in the course. We're a little bit slow out of the final corner to start our run, so we've lost a couple of hundredths already, but we are much later on the brakes into turn 1. It does compromise our exit a hair. We do make up that delta just a little bit as there are yellow flags from a car off the track there. So we're about even with our previous best lap. That time we get a much better rotation into turn 2, but it does compromise our exit just a little bit. We're kind of hovering right on about even with our previous best lap on lap 1 there. Top of the hill, try and find the turn in. We run a little bit wide, and that is an invalidated lap. So no valid lap this time. We've turned the ERS down, and there isn't enough fuel to go for a second lap. So we jump just ahead to the end of the lap to restart. We've saved enough battery to go for another flying lap. This time we've gotten a better exit as well. Now into turn 1 once again, a little bit wide on the entry. Can we make up the time on the exit? It looks to be good drive out of the corner, and this time we found about half a tenth. About almost 3/4 of a tenth, and now into turn 2. A little bit of a mount onto the curb there, and now we've picked up a fair bit of time through those first couple of corners. 1.5 tenths of improvement. We've dropped to provisionally 9th at the time, and then this time we're able to keep it in bounds. Now, much better line through this long right-hander, turning it in, getting the car rotated. We found about 3 tenths now It's all about carrying that time to the end of the lap, getting a even exit, flick the car left, and once again, get it rotated, a little bit of a lift and a tiny bit of brakes. Battery is running fairly low, though. We should have just about enough. We may lose just a little bit of derating at the very, very end of the lap. We'll generate a little bit of it under braking here, just a couple percent, but we've actually, according to the game, gone purple in the second sector. Don't know how true that actually was, but we found about half a second now on our previous best lap, 6/10 nearly, if we can have a good final corner. We do lose quite a bit of time, though, at the entry, but we get a better exit. So opening the DRS, and we do find about half a second. That puts us provisionally P6, just ahead of our teammate, as our battery ran down to about 4%. So got pretty nip and tuck with the amount of battery left there, but there is just about enough time to get in the pits, get out for one final flying run. 2.5 minutes left to go in this session, and we are going for this last run of the day. And we made a mistake. We actually forgot to turn our ERS down, or turn our ERS off on the hot lap. So you can see our battery is actually run down quite a bit. It's going to be very close to if we have enough to actually complete this entire lap with power. Luckily, the last couple of corners where you would derate, not super energy dependent, but every little bit of power helps in qualifying when it comes down to less than fractions of a second kind of margin. We have a good run through the first sector. We found about 1.5 tenths. And now starting into the second sector, finding a little bit more time through the chicane, a little bit more grip at the end of the session, of course, as the track rubbers in at usually that 5-minute mark. We found about 1/4 second now. Good exit out of turn 11, but we've lost a little bit of time coming down the hill. Can we find it back in this final sector? Battery now down to 5%, and it is going to be very, very much running out by the time we hit the start-finish line. So 6%. We found about a couple of tenths now, getting the power down. 3 tenths as we get a much better exit than our previous best lap. 3.5 tenths. The time improvement puts us just ahead of our teammate provisionally, P6, and we do, in fact, stay ahead of our teammate on the qualifying board there. MJ Povey, P1, QX Nemesis making it an all-Welsh front row. LC Fighter in third. Hasfan Nick fourth. Lawrence Boers fifth. Ourselves in sixth for one of our best qualifying performances of the season, ahead of Queasy. That one kid, Spenwolf, and Cryptic rounding out the top 10. And so championship leader down in P10 this time around. And we will just have to wait and see what kind of weather we have in store for us. But the sun is out as we are on the grid here. 5 red lights are up. We're starting on the medium compound tire, much like everybody around us. And away we go. Bit of wheel spin on the start. That's going to put us under pressure from the cars ahead. That one kid, Spenwolf, going around the outside. Heinous Lime getting involved. We managed to make up a little bit of ground on that one kid into turn 1. Early on the brakes, Cozy leaving tons of space for potentially 2 cars on our outside. We do have Spen just to the inside of us, and we're going to have to brake a little earlier with these cars in front of us. So we're going to stay wide, go around the outside, use the momentum to try and carry. As Queasy is off the track, we kind of have to back out a hair as he's rejoining, and that does allow Spenwolf to stay right alongside us into this tricky corner. So we're just going to, honestly, with Spen keeping his nose in, go wide, risk the warning just to avoid a potential crash. It's just so hard to keep 2 cars through that corner side by side. And based on where his proximity arrows were, I wasn't confident that he would stay on track and not crash into me. So I bailed out in there, and now we are slotted into 7th as we had lost that position to our teammate on the start. LC Fighter on the hard compound ahead of him. So we are trying to make our way past with the mediums as early as possible. Queasy having a little look to the inside. Has to back out of that one as he's not able to make up the ground on the Ferrari ahead. We are running in cozy 7th place. We do have Spen still on the back of us. We are going to try and have to make some ground. And we're in a position where Queasy is ahead of us in the Drivers' Championship. So I'm not going to unnecessarily pressure him. But I do need to try and get a move on with Spen behind us. We seem to have similar confidence and pace compared to Queasy ahead of us, as Spen makes up quite a bit of ground under braking there. Sometimes you can see the benefit that ABS can have. Down into turn 2. And LC Fighter starting to lose a little bit of contact with the cars ahead. So by the time DRS becomes enabled, we may have a situation where Queasy can try and jump past LC. We need to try and make up some time. LC much quicker than us on raw pace normally. So I would assume that our tire advantage of being on the mediums compared to the hards may not be enough to really stick with him. But Cryptic out of the session already, so 1 retirement in this race, and is the championship leader who will not score any points. It's early in the race. The field is still relatively bunched up, and it looks like we are not going to have any kind of race interruption, safety car, virtual or otherwise. And we still have Spen about half a second back of us. We're sitting about half a second back of our teammate. And LC is seeing that gap increase just a little bit to the cars ahead. Queasy a little bit wide through the penultimate corner here, and we stay just right in the wheel tracks. It's just all about trying to maximize this exit. We are running a fair chunk of downforce this week compared to some other cars, I believe. So straight line speed will likely not be an advantage for us as we've done at a few other tracks like Spa and Miami. So it is a track that leans more heavily on having that extra grip and downforce. So that's the compromise we chose for, to have the overall lap time pace, but that could prove to be an issue if Spen is able to stay right up behind us and is running slightly lower wings than us, as Queasy and LC still just holding position ahead of us. And you know, as you can see, there's a lot of high to mid speed corners where you kind of run right up to the exit curbing. So track limits is something we're also going to have to be careful with around the circuit today. Could be a position where we may make some places up if we are able to stay penalty free and able to stay close enough to a car. Yellow flags that looks like somebody has had a spin behind us, but we've cleared it. Queasy, big mistake, and we have to go right off to the runoff there. Lucky to not pick up a track limits warning there, although that would be an easy one to appeal. But our teammate making a mistake, and now the timing of that drops us out of DRS of the car ahead. We would have been within Queasy's DRS, but now we are just off the back of LC's DRS, and Spen has DRS on us. So we actually, turns out we did get DRS, even though we never really closed to that 1 second margin. I think the detection point is just ahead of the last corner. So I'm not sure why we got DRS, but thankful that we did. And now we are going to try and burn quite a bit of battery to try and stay in LC's DRS and at least catch up to him. Because if we can stay within his DRS range, that would give us a good defensive tool against Spenwolf behind us. Because it will at least minimize that performance differential. We have used quite a bit of our ERS, down at 25% now. So that is something we are going to have to start managing. There's not a lot of regen. But jumping ahead a good chunk, lap 15 of 35, we just kind of stayed steady. Spen had a little mistake that dropped him out of our DRS range, so we've been kind of in the back, but LC staying out. We are dipping in. We fell out of LC's DRS range as our medium tire started to fall off, so into the pits we come. Hit that limiter, and we will get ready for a tire change. 16 of 35 laps done in this race. Goes from the medium onto the hard compound tire. And it should be a relatively straightforward opportunity for us as we trundle down the pit lane and get ready to head out onto the circuit.
Pit strategy complete.
So, and taking away that pit limiter, pushing hard into turn one as that one kid is on the back of us now. And we do have the cold hard tires, so we don't want to allow this car to get by us. Because it will be tough to overtake him, tougher, just because it's a tough track to overtake on. So if we can just maintain this position, we have a little bit quicker pace naturally than the McLaren. So as long as we can stay ahead through this main portion of the circuit, we should be all right once these tires get fully fired up. Of course, House Van Nick come out just a little bit ahead of us, so we have to leave space on the inside as it looks like he was about to stick his nose up. So that does compromise our line, but he does have to back out the second part of the chicane as he had no real no place to go and didn't quite. He wasn't alongside enough to where we needed to give him space at the first part of the chicane. But I tend to be cautious, and we're just checking tire temperatures, which are now up into at least green territory, and we'll just keep pushing hard to get them up into the 90s, where they tend to get a little bit more extra grip. The hard tires were a little bit of a struggle around here in the early stages, but Spen is into the pit lane, so we're going to see if the undercut or overcut comes off. That was another important reason to stay out ahead of that one kid. We're burning tons of battery down the front straight just to try and make up as much time as we can. It was unclear whether the undercut or the overcut was the better strategy, as that is our teammate who's had a mistake. He still has yet to pit on his off of his medium tire, 17 laps into this race. But it looks like Spen still hasn't yet come out of the pits, although that was a bug I noticed because I could see him on the actual track map. So it was hard to see whether the undercut or overcut was worth it, was what was valuable, because his delta was stuck on pit for so long. You can see he's just behind our teammate by a couple of seconds. It would appear from the little flash of the track map that you saw there for just a moment. But pace is decent. We're starting to catch up with Habsvanik, although he opened up the gap. We jump ahead, lap 29. LC Fighter makes a mistake out of the final corner. He is made the switch on the mediums. Of course, he started on those hard tires. So we're up into 4th now with only 6 laps left to go in this race. And we're trying to feel out if it's just a spin that LC had or if he managed to pick up some damage. He's staying relatively close, although he's going fairly wide through some of these more downforce corners, and it does appear that Ferrari does have damage on it. 3.1 seconds the margin to Spenwolf behind. So we have a little bit of breathing space. We've gotten our fuel mix, or our fuel level down into the green. We were able to start underfueled with our driving style around this circuit. We were able to save fuel over the majority of this race without doing too much lift and coast. There's a couple corners like through here. You do lift off naturally quite a bit. A little wiggle on throttle there, but we managed to keep the car under wraps as we are pushing quite hard still to see what else he does. He does, certainly having lost 2 seconds, appear to have damage now. So we're trying to see if we can close up to the back of Habsvanik. 5.6 seconds, kind of a margin. He definitely had the pace on us around the circuit. Lauren's up in 2nd at the moment, carrying 3 seconds worth of time penalties. So he will drop back towards Habsvanik. We are just kind of also pushing to see if we can get within 6 seconds to see if he picks up another mistake. But lap 31, Queasy out of the session in the final corner, and that is a full safety car deployment. So we slow to match up the delta, and with just a few laps left to go, lap 31 of 35, we do have an opportunity to close the field up, and that is going to be massive pain for Lawrence in the Red Bull just ahead of us, because he is now going to have the entire field bunched up and now take that 3 second time penalty. He's got to try and dash off 3 seconds before the end of this one. But we're into the pit lane now. We are going to box for those soft tires. A very ginger entry to make sure not to pick up any 5 second speeding in the pit lane penalties. And onto the soft compound tires we go. It does appear, at least at this point, that Lawrence and Habsvanik have stayed out. We will see if anybody else is able to overtake us. But it looks like Spen, Nemesis all into the pit lane. Nemesis has had a couple of mistakes and spins. 12 seconds of time penalties. He's in 6th now, boxing for those softs. So even if he manages to catch us and get back up to us, it will be difficult for him to clear the margin he needs. So we do need to slow down delta-wise. Here comes Heinous Lime, who hits the safety car behind us as we were slowing for our delta. And you know, you had to stay behind us anyway, but he literally pulled along seemingly to try and overtake us, but hit the safety car and is out of this session. So safety car made of absolute something. I don't know what it's made out of, but it's made out of a lot. But jumping up to the race restart, we just about caught the tail end of the field. Not quite, because the game doesn't force you to catch the field if there are only going to be 2 green flag laps left. But pulling off to the side is the lap down car of Vickers, so letting us through. We did not quite get very close to the cars ahead. We thought we might be able to get closed up, but there is trouble for Lawrence, who has stayed out on the hard compound tires, carrying that 3 second time penalty. Habsvanik and Nick has already made their way past. Spen has 3 seconds of time penalties and is about 3 seconds behind us. We are penalty free, and we need to stay that way for the rest of the race. But now we have an opportunity to catch and maybe even overtake Lawrence on track for the podium position. But as it stands, based on the penalties, we will take that podium away from him. But look at the ground we make up, especially once we get into these medium speed corners where we have so much more grip on these soft tires. We're really only going to have the one opportunity to overtake down the pit straight here as we start the final lap, but closing, and well, we're going to have a good shot at making a move down into turn 1, I would think, in this situation. as he is on some old hard tires that are just screaming in pain. Not the right move, I think, to stay out. And now we've got an opportunity to score some points on the Constructors' Championship rivals. But out of the final corner, full overtake mode. He pulls to the inside defensive very early. And there's a little connection glitch, and it looks like he is about to move to the racing line. We have to kind of try and dodge the AI, and when he reconnects right in front of us, so nearly a big crash. And at that point, we just had to back out and just preserve the car. It cost us quite a bit of time now as Spen is closing up, and there's no real overtaking opportunity. But at this stage, I'm looking at the car ahead, and with that big connection glitch, thinking there's no reason to overtake, to try and force a move anywhere on track here, unless, because even if Spen, jumps past me by me being held up by Lawrence, I'll still overtake both of them on penalties. So at this point, I had decided I'm just going to stay right where I'm at. Just follow Lawrence right to the finish. There's no penalties for Habs in front of us, so I'm not too worried about trying to make a gap to him. And we are just going to safely bring the car home. Stay a little bit on a defensive line just in case Spen has a look up the inside in the final couple of corners. But we are going to just stay right where we're at, and we are sitting in a podium position as MJ Povey takes the race win. We close the door in the final corner, ease on the throttle, make sure there's no big moments, and across the line we grab our second podium of the season. So a little bit of help from the safety car, but we were running fourth at the time, and a solid performance here for us in Hungary. So very happy with how that one went. Habs fan Nick picks up another podium. And that does help us in Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship with being able to finish ahead of Lawrence, because Queasy was out of the session, so only one opportunity to score points there. Luckily, we made it happen. So there's the podium. MJ Povey taking the top step as he comes briefly out of retirement. Habs fan Nick, as he's been so many times on the podium this season, showing very, very good pace overall. And there we are as well, taking home a little bit of third place champagne. So solid drive. Very happy with how Hungary turned out as we get to the last few races of the season. So we'll get ready to check out the full final classification. But we do have, I believe it is Australia round 8 coming up next. And then we are scheduled for Abu Dhabi the weekend after that. And then the season finale in Brazil. But full classifications, MJ Povey, P1, Habs fan Nick, second, ourselves in third. Lawrence comes home fourth, Spen in fifth, Nemesis sixth with the fastest lap point for Ferrari, LC in seventh. That one kid in McLaren picking up points in eighth, Vickers in ninth, and Heinous Lime retired under that, hitting that safety car. So no points in that DNF. Queasy, Alfredo, Drifty, Cryptic, and Chuck, the retirements. But thank you all for joining me once again this week. I will catch you guys next time. Y'all have a great day. Peace.